Sound City, we all sin. If I bring a couple rounds with me, then we all win.
Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of Into the Badzones. This is a series that is dedicated to Necromunda Outlander campaign, and this is Battleboard number 4. This is a mining expedition that is fought between my two sisters Shade, as well as the kiddo. Shade is bringing Mercator Umbrus, her Clanless Outcast gang, while the kiddo is bringing Children of the Vault, her Cold Traders Outcast gang. So for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, if you're wondering what's going on, what we're decided to do is to actually double down on the amount of Necromunda battle reports that we actually do for this channel. My friends and I have been loving playing the Ash Waste campaign, Anarchy Road. We have 12 different gangs attached to that campaign, and we are having a blast playing it. And of course, for those of you who are longtime viewers of the channel know, that actually is released bi-weekly every other week on Mondays. However, there was a few members of my gaming group who really wanted to play an Outlander campaign and to actually use the settlement mechanics in order to do a campaign on that. So because of that, we were able to actually get 3 people who wanted to play this. This was Shade the Kiddo, as well as Dark Lord Mac, and myself. So because of that, we will be putting this series out every single Thursday every week, so that way you guys can get double the Necromunda action and see exactly how an Outlander campaign fully develops. So with that being said, we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we will show you photos of both gangs, as well as their rosters. So if you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this one, go and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So the scenario we'll be playing is Mining Expedition. It is an Outlanders scenario that takes place during the development phase. And since we will be playing this in the Badzones of Hive Primus, we do of course have environments that we roll for in every single battle port, as well as Badzone environmental effects every turn. So in this battle, we will be playing in a Sump Sea, and because of that, there are some rules attached to it. You can't be played in a Zone Mortalis game. Also, the ground level is a Sump Sea and must either stay above it or on a terrain piece so that way you don't fall in. If a fighter falls into the Sump Sea, they lose all actions for activation. They must make a strength test. If they pass, they can swim up to their movement characteristic to escape the sea. However, if failed, they go out of action and must roll on the lasting injuries table. So on this battle report, there are 4 pieces of prospecting sites that are at least 4 inches long and at least 8 inches away from the battlefield edge. For the crews in the scenario, both gangs get up to 10 fighters of their choice for the scenario, and standard deployment operates on this one. So in this battle report, we will be using gang tactics, and gangs earn 1 gang tactic for every 100 point of difference between their gang ratings. So in this scenario, the kiddo received 3 gang tactics for this battle because Shade is actually 300 points higher than her gang, and her tactics will be honorless victory, all or nothing, and it's personal. Now, ending the battle ends when all sites have been successfully prospected, or if one gang has fighters remaining left on the battlefield. As for victory, gangs who prospect the most sites is the winner, and if both gangs mine equal amounts, and it ends in a draw. Now for the rewards on this one, each mine site gives 2d6 times 10 credits. For experience, each participant earns 1 point of experience, and additional point of experience for each fighter who mines a prospecting site. And for reputation, if either gang balls up, both gangs will lose 1 point of reputation as well. Now as for the Outlander campaign rewards, you earn 2d6 times 2 salvage points for each prospecting site that you manage to mine. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go ahead and talk about battle plans. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield, And as you can see, my friends are playing on the tombs. So for those of you guys who are long-term viewers of the channel, you guys are immediately recognizing this piece of terrain. It was created years ago by our good resident terrain wizard, Iron Major. He actually made this whole entire terrain piece out of packaging styrofoam, and he mounted it on a whiteboard. And we use this, of course, time and time again throughout our Necromunda battle reports to represent a subterranean tunnel system that's in the very base of the Underhive. Now, in this scenario, we are playing in a sludge sea environment, so that means that the ground level of the entire tombs counts as being a sludge sea. So it's kind of like playing the childhood game The Floor is Lava. The objective is to stay off the ground. If you touch the ground, you could go out of action if you fail a strength test. So as you can see, there are a lot of walkways and gangplanks and cover pieces that have been put along the top of the tombs to represent the fact that these players are trying to jump from island to island in order to secure the mining posts. Now, if you look in the middle of the table, we actually have 4 long rows. Those are your prospecting sites, and those actually surround the islands in the middle of the table. Now, my little sister, the kiddo, is deployed on the bottom left-hand corner with the Cold Trader Outcasts, while Shade is deployed on the upper right-hand corner with the Clanless Outcasts up there. And as for their battle plans, pretty much the idea here is that since both gangs use a lot of long-range shooting, they're both just planning to try to get to the center as quickly as possible, try to capture those prospecting sites and to mine them, because to mine those prospecting sites requires you to do a double action in order to secure those, and at the same time protect any fighters from mining so that way they can take the maximum amount of prospecting materials from those prospecting sites and hopefully drive off their opponents. And this one's going to be kind of interesting because of all the walkways, so my friends will be taking a lot of initiative tests to see if their characters actually fall into the sludge sea. So with the battle plan over with, let's go ahead and talk about deployment. So first up, we'll talk about the Children of the Vault. This is the kiddos Cold Trader Outcast gang, and on the bottom left hand corner in the back is Mr. Sinister. He is a Cold Trader who's also the leader of this gang. He also has the weird archetype. He has a sling gun, a stiletto knife, a bio booster, photo goggles, as well as armor weave. He also has the step aside skill as well as the overseer ability, and he also is a technomancer discipline with the overcharged psychic power. Now, right next to him on the right hand side, that character's name is Silk. She is a Hive Scum. She has a last gun as well as photo goggles as well as flak armor. And right next to her on the left hand side is Miss Spectre, another Hive Scum. She has autogun, photo goggles as well as flak armor. Taking point up ahead at the edge of the deployment zone for the kiddo are 3 mortar fighters. She has an assault fire team. In the back, that character's name is Mr. Smug. He is a bosun who's also got the weird upgrade as well. He's also got a shotgun, a knife, photo goggles with mesh armor. He has the dodge skill, and he also practices from the technomancer discipline with manipulate lumens. Right next to him on the right hand side, that is Slick, another Hive Scum who's got a shotgun with solid and scatter shot, photo goggles as well as flak armor. And taking point is Ghost, who is a Voidborn Scum. That character has last pistol as well as photo goggles, fighting knife, as well as a hazard suit. And that makes up the kiddos' assault fire team. And deployed in the middle of the table using their infiltrate special rule is Wesley, who is an outcast champion who has the mastermind archetype. He's armed with a Krut long rifle as well as photo goggles and mesh armor, and he also has the infiltrate skill. And that pretty much makes a deployment for the kiddo on this one. So moving across the other side of the table, in the upper right hand corner is Mercator Umbrus. This is my little sister Shade's Clanless Outcast gang, and in the back is their leader, that is Hagar Freelord. He is the special character who has a mastermind archetype. He's equipped with 2 plasma pistols as well as a respirator as well as mesh armor. This character also has the overseer as well as fixer skills, and they also have the ex-gilded armories as well as the well-connected special rule. Now, right in front of Hagar Freelord are 2 Hive Scum named Tugs as well as Soldiers. Tugs and Soldiers are equipped exactly the same with autoguns, stub guns, as well as respirators. And taking point on the left hand side, that is Chopper. He is an outcast champion with a mastermind archetype. He's got a grenade launcher with frag and crack grenades. He's got a stub gun as well as smoke grenades. He also has a respirator, mesh armor, as well as the Overwatch skill. And next on the right hand side is Runedog, which is a Hive Scum who's equipped with 2 stub guns. He's also packing smoke grenades as well as a respirator. And on the left-hand side of Shay's deployment are 2 more Hive Scum named Donnie and Darko. They're both equipped with stub guns as well as bolt guns as well as respirators. And in the middle table, using their infiltrate skill, is Tough Shakes, who is an outcast champion with a mastermind archetype. This fighter's got a stub gun and plasma combat pistol with a chain sword as well as dum-dum rounds. This character is also equipped with a respirator, mesh armor, and has the infiltrate special rule. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both the Kiddo and Shade roll off for priority to see which of them will be going first. So, for the very first Badzone environmental effect is a Brain Leaf Outbreak, which means that fighters who get seriously injured or taken out of action have the potential of becoming Brain Leaf zombies, in which case they can affect their peers, or because they're fighting in a Sumsea environment, if a fighter falls directly into the Sumsea, they automatically become a Brain Leaf zombie. So, things are looking pretty treacherous right off the bat. So we go directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Cold Trader Outcasts, and my little sister Kiddo will go first, and the first thing she decides to do is to play one of her gang tactics, which is called It's Personal. She puts this tactic directly against Hagar Freelord, who is the leader of the Mercator Umbrus, and what that does is that means that any attacker from the Cold Traders who attacks this character get +1 to their weapon skill as well as +1 to their ballistics skill in order to take out this fighter. And that's pretty much how the rule works for that tactic. So from there we go directly to the Kiddo's very first activation, and she decides to activate Mr. Smug, her bosun. He does a double action in order to use his Manipulate Lumens ability, and because of that he manages to get that willpower test taken care of, which means the entire battlefield now is suffering blackout conditions. What that's supposed to mean is that means that unless you have photo goggles, you really can't shoot at anything that's further than 3 inches away, or charge anything unless you're 3 inches away from it. It's to represent the fact that their lights have totally gone out in this dome, and because of that, the fighters have a really hard time doing this. The only problem with that, though, is that every single gang has pretty much fought against the Cold Traders, and this is a very good tactic that the Kiddo actually used to great effect in the very first of the scenarios on this campaign. The problem, though, is that because we were all so shell-shocked from that ability that she used and was able to control the battlefield using darkness, pretty much all the gangs have pretty much bought up photo goggles for all their fighters. If not photo goggles, then infrared sights, so that way if this kind of thing happens again, we could actually still fight and cause chaos. Unfortunately for the Kiddo, she had no idea that the Mercator Umbrus had actually bought photo goggles for their entire gang, so she was completely fine with it, because now the Cold Traders from the Children of the Vault are not the only gang that can dominate in the darkness now, so that part was pretty crazy. But continuing on with the Kiddo's rest of her activation, as you can see in this photo, both Ghost as well as Mr. and Slick do double movements forward, traveling along the game planks, heading directly to the center of the table to back up their friend Wesley. So from there we then go directly to Shade's first activation, and she decides to activate Tough Shakes, her outcast champion. He does a basic action to aim, so that way he gets +1 to hit, and he decides to open fire with both the plasma pistol as well as a stub gun with dum-dum rounds on the combat pistol. Now the reason why she decided to take a basic action to aim is so that way she gets the +1 to hit, because firing both weapons with combo weapons actually gives you a -1 to hit against. Now she is not within the short distance range, so because of that she will be rolling off on her unmodified ballistic skill. Unfortunately for her though, she also rolled an ammo check result on that one, so because of that the plasma pistol is completely out of ammo, because the scarce trait. At the same time she's also out of dum-dum rounds for her stub gun. And to add insult to injury, unfortunately for Shade, she failed to wound Wesley, so because of that he is currently pinned. The Kiddo does pass her initiative check for this fighter, so because he does not fall into the Sludge Sea, and that pretty much makes up Shade's first activation. So from there we go to the Kiddo, who does a group activation by activating Mr. Sinister, who also activates Silk as well as Miss Spectre, and those fighters do double movements forward along the bottom edge of the table, so that way they get the gangplanks that leads directly towards the center of the table, so that way they can start mining those prospecting sites. Meanwhile, Shade goes next by activating Chopper, who does a group activation with Runedog, and both those fighters once again do double moves directly to the center of the battlefield, so that way they can lay down some suppressive fire with that grenade launcher. And then from there, the Kiddo then makes her last activation with Wesley. Wesley does a basic action to get back on his feet again, so that way he can escape pinning, and does another basic action to open fire with his True Long Rifle directly towards Mercator Umbrus at Tough Shakes. Unfortunately for the Kiddo though, she missed her shot, so because of that, not much really happened there. So with that, the rest of the turn is dedicated to Shade, since she's the only one who has fighters left. The first thing she does is a group activation with Hagar Freelord, who also activates Tugs and Soldiers. Tugs and Soldiers do double movements along the right-hand side of the battlefield, so that way they can create a crossfire kill zone against the upcoming Cold Traders. Meanwhile, Hagar Freelord does a double movement as well to go right behind Chopper, joining up with the rest of that fire team to get into the center of the battlefield. And for Shade's last set of activation, she actually does something quite daring. She activates Donnie as well as Darko and decides to take leap actions to jump from one island to the other island on the top center of the battlefield. Now, to do that leap action, she needs to successfully pass an initiative check, and if she fails that initiative check, she goes plummeting directly to the drink and goes directly into the Sludge Sea, which could have been a really bad result for her. But the sad part is these guys only have initiative 4 up, so they're not exactly the most flexible or fastest gangers in the entire game. But luckily for Shade, though, she managed to pass both for initiative tests for both those fighters, so they make those jumps no problem. And with that, that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 1, and here is an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, Shade is slowly making her way down from the top right hand corner, using the catwalks as well as the islands to set up kind of like looks like a crossfire position, with using her fighters on the top as well as the right hand side to basically make sure that no members of the Cold Traders could actually get to the center of the table and access those expedition sites. However, at the same time, you can see that the kiddo is also trying to move as quickly as she can, sending up her Cold Traders directly into the center of the table, so that way they can start prospecting those prospecting sites directly in the center of the table. So with the end of turn number 1 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and the first thing my friends do is they roll to see what Badzone environmental effect they will have to contend with next. So the Badzone environment effect that they will have to deal with is Muty Tribe, which means that they will have to worry about taking shots from makeshift bows and arrows from mutants who are living in this area. Pretty much how this rule works is that you have to roll a d6 for every fighter on the table. If you roll a 1, they get shot at by a mutie with a bow. Now, while that may be kind of inconvenient, though, it's not really all that bad, because the muties only have a ballistic skill of 5, and I believe the bow only has a strength of 2. It actually gives you +1 on your armor save, because it's kind of like a weak weapon. But still, the reason why it's so dangerous, especially in this battle report, is because my friends are playing on a Sludge Sea, which means that if they get hit, they at least have to take initiative tests, and if they fail those initiative tests, they could fall in the Sludge Sea and of course go out of action. So that is the real danger with this environmental effect. And a perfect illustration of that is what happens in this photo. So unfortunately for Shade, Tough Shakes rolled a 1, so because he does get hit by a mutie bow. But luckily for Shade, though, the bow doesn't actually wound him, doesn't cause any harm. But because he got hit and he's so close to the edge of the island, he does have to take an initiative test. And unfortunately for Shade, she fails that initiative test, so Tough Shakes goes directly into the drink and goes out of action. When we rolled up for the lasting injuries for this guy, she actually rolled up lessons learned, so because of that, he will go into recovery, but he does earn a bonus 3 experience points. And I assume that the lesson here is to not stand so close to edges, I'm imagining. So with the environmental effects over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and both the kiddo and Shade roll off for priority to see which of them will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2, and Shade from the Mercator Umbrus will be going first. So for her very first activation, she activates Donnie, who is a Hive Scum. He does a double move over to the left-hand side on the top of the island, taking cover behind that Pesco barrier, so that way he's got good line of sight to fire his bolt gun directly down the middle of the battlefield and try to snipe off any Cold Traders that he's able to do. Meanwhile, for the kiddo's first activation, she activates Wesley. Wesley does a double action in order to start mining the prospecting site. And if you're wondering how you do that, you basically roll 2d6, and there's a little table that you roll up on to see exactly what the effects were. In this situation, though, when the kiddo rolled her 2d6, she didn't get high enough, so because of that, she discovered nothing in the pit so far. But if she was to do it again, though, she rolled 3d6. If she gets a high enough score, she'll be able to scavenge the materials from this prospecting site. Meanwhile, on the top of the table, Darko goes next, and Darko, of course, once again does a double activation to go right next to Donnie, taking cover behind that Hesco barrier, so that way they can open fire with their bolt guns later on. So going back to the kiddo, her first activation is on Mr. Sinister, who does a group activation with Silk and Spectre. And once again, all 3 of those fighters do double movements as quick as they can across the battlefield in order to get to those mining prospects. As for Shade, she then does a group activation with Chopper. Chopper actually does a double move to the top of the table, heading towards Donnie and Darko, so that way he can start putting some long-range overwatching fire using his grenade launcher. At the same time, the Rune Dog, who's another Hive Skim, was with them with that group activation. Actually, my little sister Shade takes another risk, has that fighter once again take a leap action across the one island directly to the other one. She managed to stick the landing and pass her initiative test as well. So my sister Shade, man, she's just going for the acrobatics on this one, which is highly risky because if they fall into that sludge sea, they could go out of action. Meanwhile, the kiddo goes next, and she activates Ghost, who does double movements forward up to the top of the table, so that we can start engaging Donnie and Darko. And for the rest of these photos are taken after several activations in a row, just because for the rest of the turn, my sisters were pretty much just moving their pieces. So as you can see here in the bottom right hand corner, both Tugs and Soldiers do get activated with a group activation by Hagar Freelord. Tugs and Soldiers move to the bottom right hand corner of the table, taking up cover positions so that way they can provide overwatching fire directly onto the walkways leading to the center portion of the battlefield. Meanwhile, Hagar Freelord does double movement upwards to the top of the table, following along Chopper, getting ready to lay down some long range fire with his twin plasma pistols. As for the kiddo, Slick does a double move forward directly to the next mining prospecting area, so that way during his next turn he can start mining for resources. And finally, the bosun, Mr. Smug, does double movements forward, so that way he can catch up the rest of his gang as well, taking cover behind that little makeshift wall. And that pretty much makes it the action phase on this one. We skipped the end phase because no one got injured, and here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield at the end of turn number 2. As you can see, the coal traders are slowly making their way directly into the center of the table, as well as fighters heading to the top to intercept some of the Mercator Umbrus, as well as the bottom in order to intercept the Mercator Umbrus that way as well. Meanwhile, Shade is starting to force her fighters to the top as well as right hand side of the table, so that way they can take cover positions in order to engage anybody who does try to cross into the center of the table. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and the first thing that my sisters roll for are environmental effects. And once again, for the Badzone environmental effects on this one, the Meaty Tribe effect is still active, so because of that, my sisters roll d6s for each of their fighters to see if anyone happens to run the horrible luck of rolling a 1. And unfortunately for the kiddo, she does roll a 1 for Silk, so because of that, she does get shot at with a Muti bow. It does manage to hit her, but it fails to wound her, so she's just currently pinned. And that takes us directly to the top of turn number 3, and once again, Shade and the kiddo roll for initiative to see which of them will have priority. So on the top of turn number 3, the Clanless will get the initiative on this one. So once again, Shade goes first. She activates Rune Dog to do a double action, so that way you can do a mining action on his prospecting site. Unfortunately for the Shade, when she rolled her 2d6, she did fail to find anything, but on the next activation, the next turn, this character could do exactly the same mining action, this time roll a 3d6 to see if they actually find any materials there worth saving. So the kiddo goes next, and for her first activation, she does activate Slick, who does once again a double mining action directly into that prospecting site. And just like Shade, this character found nothing either, but on the next turn, if they activate to do this again, they roll 3d6 to see if they can manage to find any materials worth salvaging. So for Shade's next activation, she then activates Donnie. Donnie does a basic action to aim with his bolt gun to give him a +1 modifier to hit the target of Ghost, and another basic action open fire with the bolt gun. Now, Ghost does lie within the short range measurement of the bolt gun, so because that Shade gets actually +2 to hit, so all she had not to do was roll a 1. Now, she does manage to hit as well as wound Ghost, putting 2 wounds on him. However, Ghost is also a Voidborn Scum, which means he also has 3 wounds on him too, and toughness 5, so he's okay. He's got 1 wound left on him before he gets hurt. And unfortunately for Shade, though, when she rolled for her rapid fire dice, she only rolled a 1, but she also rolled the ammo check on that. So because of that, she'll need to roll a 6 for a basic action in order for her to reload Donnie's bolt gun. So from there, we then go directly to my little sister, the kiddo. The kiddo then activates Mr. Smug. Mr. Smug does a basic action aim with his Crude Long Rifle and another basic action open fire directly into Rune Dog. Manages to hit as well as put a serious injury on Rune Dog. So because of that, Rune Dog goes crashing face first into the dirt. And he is currently bleeding out with a serious injury. At the same time, the kid also managed to put a flesh wound on that character as well, so he's also 1 toughness less, so easier to wound. But luckily for Shade, though, she does manage to pass her initiative test with Rune Dog, so because that Rune Dog does not have to worry about falling into the sludge sea. So because of that, we go directly towards Shade's next activation. In this case, she activates Chopper. Once again, Chopper opens up with her grenade launcher, firing a crack grenade directly into Slick. Does a basic action aim to get that +1 to hit, and another basic action in order to hit him to open fire with that grenade launcher. She does manage to hit as well as to wound Slick, and the knockback also pushes him back an inch as well. Unfortunately for Shade, though, the kiddo does manage to pass her initiative check with Slick, so because he does stay on board that little walkway there. And at the same time, when she rolled for the injury for Slick, my sister Shade rolled up just a flesh wound. So because he's perfectly fine, he's laying on the ground. Now, granted, he is easier to wound, but he can still fight, he can still shoot, still pretty much a threat. So with that, we go directly to the top of the battlefield once again, and the kiddo activates Ghost. Ghost does a basic action to escape pain to get back on his feet again, and with a basic action, open fire with his last pistol directly into Donnie. Now, he does manage to hit Donnie, but he fails to wound him, so because that Donnie is just pinned right now, and not to take that insult lightly, my little sister Shade activates Darko. Darko once again does a basic action to aim with his bolt gun and opens fire directly into Ghost. Unfortunately for Shade, though, she only managed to get one shot off with the bolt gun, and she failed to wound, so because that Ghost is currently pinned. The kiddo then once again activates her leader, the Cold Trader Mr. Sinister, who was a group activation with Silk, as well as Miss Spectre, and those characters do double movements, moving up directly towards the center of the table in order to get to those prospecting sites. Now then, in this photo, you'll notice we've actually made a rules mistake on this one. And the reason why we made a rules mistake is because unfortunately all three of us, as this battle was progressing, we all forgot that the kiddo already activated Slight at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of the turn. So we forgot that person was already activated. So what ends up happening is the kiddo then activates Slight. Slight does a double action in order to mine the mine the mining site right next to him, and does manage to get the initiative on that one, manage to get all the materials from it as well. That's why we put that little black die with the out of action result on it, in terms of the fact that prospecting site has already been mined. Now, because of that, we go directly to Shade's turn, and Shade then activates Hagar Freelord. Now, Hagar Freelord does a simple movement to go directly to the top where Donnie and Darko is, and for a basic action, opens fire with blows plasma guns directly into Slick as well. So Slick does get hit, he does get wounded as well, and gets serious injuries put on him, and what ends up happening is that he falls directly into the Sludge Sea and goes out of action that way. Now, if you're wondering why we don't take photos of the other stuff, is because right when I was about to take the other photos, we realized we made a bunch of mistakes at this point. But both my sisters decided to go with it. You know, it's their game. I completely forgot that they reactivated that fighter, and we decided just to go on for the rest of the battle. So continuing on the kiddo's turn, she then activates Mr. Smug the Bosun, who does a double movement forward to the top of the table, to getting ready to help out Ghost, so that way they can put their assault on the top half of the table. So with that over with, they go directly to the end phase, and as you can see in this photo, when it comes to the recovery phase, unfortunately for the kid, for Shade, she still rolls a serious injury directly for Moondog, so he is still laying on the ground, and he is still bleeding out. And both my sisters also passed their bottle tests, so that way none of them have to take cool tests next turn. So that takes us directly to the end of turn number 3, and here is an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, it's anyone's game at this point. Both teams are starting to take a lot of casualties for both gangs. At the same time, my little sister, the kiddo, has managed to successfully mine one of the mining prospects as well. Now, granted, we did make a mistake on that one because the fighter had already been activated earlier in the turn, but you know what, it was the easiest mistake to make, and my sisters were fine with it. We're just playing for fun anyway, so we just kind of roll with it for the most part. As you can see, what's happening is that Shade is actually starting to set up a defensive position from the top of the table through the middle portion of the table to the bottom to try to prevent the kiddo's forces from actually closing in to mine those different prospecting sites. At the same time, though, the kiddo is still maintaining forces in the center of the table to mine those mining prospects, and sending a couple of forces up to the top in order to deal with some threats from above. So with that being said, that pretty much ends turn number 3, and we go to top of turn number 4, and once again my sisters roll for environmental effects. So for the top of turn number 4, once again, the immunity tribe is still in activation for the Badzone environmental effects, and luckily this time around no one actually got shot with a mutant bow, so because of that, we go directly with the rest of turn number 4, and my sisters roll for initiative to see which of them will have priority. And that takes us directly to the top of turn number 4 for the Cold Traders. My little sister Kiddo managed to get the initiative on this one. So for her first activation, she activates Wesley. Wesley does a double activation in order to do a double action on mining the prospecting site, and actually manages to get some salvage from that. So because of that, managed to earn a salvage token, and now that mining site is completely mined out. So from there we go to Shade's first activation, and she activates Chopper, her Outcast champion. Her Outcast champion actually does a basic action to aim his grenade launcher for a +1 to hit, and another basic action to open fire with a crack grenade across the island and the Sludge Sea directly into Mr. Smug the Bosun. Not only does Shade manage to hit that character, but also wound that character as well. So Mr. Smug the Bosun does manage to take both wounds from that crack grenade, and actually got 2 serious injury results as an effect of that. But the real killer though is that my sister Kiddo failed to roll her initiative test for that character. So because that, Mr. Smug goes falling directly into the drink of the Sludge Sea and goes immediately out of action. And when my sister Shade rolled the last inner table, rolled an 11 on that, 16 on that one. So because of that, that character does go out of action with an out cold result, but it will also skip recovery. Meanwhile, at the top of the table, this photo is actually taken after several activations, so we'll go and talk about that real quick. So what ended up happening is that the Kiddo goes next. She activates Ghost. Ghost does a basic action, get back on his feet again, and another basic action, open fire with his auto pistol. Unfortunately for him though, he does miss his shot, so because of that, nothing much happens there. From there, we then go directly to the Kiddo. The Kiddo then activates, to Shade. Shade activates Darko, her other highest skill, who's got a bolt gun. He actually opens fire with his bolt gun directly into Ghost. Unfortunately for that character though, he does miss his shot, so nothing much really happens there. And I forgot, we'll show the activations later on down the screen, but then the Kiddo goes next afterwards, which brings back to Shade. Shade then activates Donnie. Donnie does a basic action, get back on his feet again to reload his bolt gun, manages to successfully do that, and fires another shot directly into Ghost. Does manage to hit Ghost this time around, but fails to wound, so because that Ghost once again is pinned, and once again got another ammo roll check on that one. So, my sister Shade just can't get any luck with those bolt guns. And so this is the rest of the activations took place here with the Kiddo with her guys while that shooting on the top of the table is going on. So Mr. Sinister goes next, and once again they do group activations moving up forward. As you can see, Mr. Sinister as well as Miss Spectre and move up directly to that wall to take cover, and Silk has also moved up a little bit so that we can start taking pot shots at tugs and soldiers across the right hand side. So as you can see in this photo, Shade then goes next. She activates Tugs. Tugs opens fire with his autogun, firing 2 shots directly into Silk. The first shot missed, but the second one did manage to hit her, as well as put a serious injury directly onto her. So because of that, she does fall face down to the ground, and she is currently bleeding out. Meanwhile, at the top of the table, Hagar Freelander goes next. He does get activated, does a double move to go directly towards Donnie and Darko, so that way he can also help out these fighters and direct them with group activations. So with the action phase over with, we go directly to the end phase. So during the recovery portion of the end phase, unfortunately Runedog does go out of action, but goes out with an out cold result. So because that, he does go out of action for the game, but will skip recovery and makes a full recovery no problem. As for Silk, the Kiddo rolled injury die for that fighter, rolled a flesh wound on that one, so because that Silk does roll over, and she is 1 toughness less because of that flesh wound. So she is easier to wound, but she's also still a threat. She can still fight, still shoot, still move. I would consider that a huge threat. And with that, that takes us directly to the end of turn number 4. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the table. As you can see, 2 of the mining prospecting sites in the middle of the table have been completely drained of materials by the coal traders. At the same time, the coal traders' assault from the top of the table is being blunted by by Shade as well as the Clanless Outcasts. At the same time, the Kiddo is trying to move her forces up to the center of the set of islands there on the bottom of the screen. But once again, she's also being intercepted by the pretty accurate long-range fire of the Mercator Umbrus. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 5, and my sister's roll off to see what the environmental effect will be. Alright, so that takes us directly to Witch's Lair on this one, and pretty much how this one works is that characters will be attacked with psychic attacks in this round. Luckily for both my sisters, no one actually had to worry about taking psychic attacks, so because of that we go directly to the rest of the turn, and my sisters roll for priority to see which of them will be going first. So that takes directly to the top of turn number 5 for the Clanless, and my sister Shade, the first thing she does, she activates Hagar Freelord. Hagar Freelord does a group activation with both Donnie as well as Darko. Now Darko actually moves up his normal movement allowance and then tries to open fire with his bolt gun directly into Ghost. Unfortunately for Shade though, she missed her shots, so because of that, nothing much happened there. So from there we go directly to Donnie. Donnie once again tries to reload his bolt gun both times. For both of his actions, fails to do either. And so because of that, Shade then activates her leader Hagar Freelord, who then takes a basic action to get +1 to hit with his plasma pistols and opens fire with both plasma pistols directly into Ghost. Not only did she manage to hit Ghost as well, but also put that character out of action with a hand injury. So because of that, he will lose 1 point of weapon skill because of that hand injury, and he will go directly into recovery. So with that, we go directly to the Kiddo's next activation, and the Kiddo selects Mr. Sinister to do a Overseer ability. So the Overseer ability, what that does, it gives a fighter within 12 inches double sets of activations. So Mr. Sinister puts it directly onto Silk. Silk actually does 2 sets of movements in order to move directly to the first of the mining prospecting sites on that island, and then for a double set of activations for the second set, she does a double action, do the mining action, and manage to get the resources from that mining pit as well. And because he's a leader who does a group activation as well, he then activates Miss Spectre. Now Miss Spectre does a basic action aim with her auto gun and another basic action open fire with it, and she manages to hit Tugs. Now she does hit Tugs, but unfortunately for her though, she fails to wound him. But what actually put this guy out of action though is that he failed his initiative test. So because that, Tugs goes falling face first into the sludge sea and automatically goes into action. And when Shade rolls for the injury on this guy, she rolls once again lessons learned. So because he will go into recovery, but he also earns 2 bonus experience points from learning how not to get shot in the future. And to add insult to injury, Shade of course has to take a cool test for soldiers because he was within 3 inches of Tugs going out of action. And unfortunately for soldiers, he failed his cool test. He runs back I think 9 inches along the right hand side of the battlefield trying to escape the firepower that's coming his way. So for Shade's last activation, she then activates Chopper. Chopper does a simple move action to move his move so that way he can open fire with his grenade launcher directly into Silk. Unfortunately though, he misses the shot with the grenade, so it bounces off harmlessly, and no harm, no foul. So with the action phase over with, you go directly to the end phase, and unfortunately for Shade, Soldiers does not manage to get his cool back, so because he is still continuing to run and fling. However, during the end phase, disaster does strike. What ends up happening is that Shade has to take a willpower test for Hagar Freelord. Now, according to the Witch's Lair rules, what ends up happening is that during the end phase, you basically roll for a random fighter to see if anybody succumbs to the Witch's evil mind control. Now, the kiddo actually managed to pass her willpower test, so no harm, no foul there. But when it came to Hagar Freelord, though, Shade did fail her intelligence or willpower test. So because he does get possessed, which means the first thing he does, he walks directly towards the edge and throws himself off into the swamp sea. Unfortunately for Shade, her fighter does go out of action, and because of that, when she rolled up on him, actually rolled a lasting injury of hobbled. So because of that, Hagar Freelord is now only movement 3 now, because he sustained injuries from that Sump Sea. So with that, it takes us directly to the end of turn number 5. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, of the 4 mining sites being mined so far, 3 of them have been controlled by the coal traders. At the same time, Shade's forces are slowly falling apart, taking casualties, fleeing, that sort of thing. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 6, the very last turn of this battle report, and my sisters roll for the environmental effects. And once again, the Witch's Lair will be, of course, affecting this battlefield because they were unable to discard the discard wall on that one. So because of that, we go directly to the top of turn number 6, and my sisters roll off for priority to see which of them will be going first. So that takes directly to the top of turn number 6, and the Cold Trader Outcast get to go first. So what ends up happening is the kiddo does once again activate Mr. Sinister, and does his Overseer ability directly onto Miss Spectre, giving her double sets of activations as well. For her first set of activation, Miss Spectre does simple movements to go directly to the next top of the center of the battlefield, so that way she can get to that prospecting site, and that makes up her first set of activation. And for a second set of activations, what she does is she does a double action to mine the prospecting site, and once again manage to score a high enough score in order to get the materials from that mining site. And with that, all 4 mining prospecting sites have been claimed by the gold traders. And with that, that takes directly to the end of the game with a victory for the Cold Trader Outcast on this one. So because of that, my little sister, the kiddo, managed to win this battle report against her older sister, Shade. And we're going directly to the post game because this battle is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Alright, so first of all, let's talk about Mercator Umbrus. So for their injuries, they actually suffered 4 injuries in this battle report. Hagar Freelord suffered a hobbling injury, so he goes directly into recovery and gets -1 to his movement, so he's only movement 3 now. Tough Shakes as well as Tugs, both of those guys got the lessons learned injury, so because of they both go to recovery, but Tough Shake also earns a bonus 3 experience point, and Tugs earned a bonus 2 experience point as well. As for Runedog, he also went out of action, but suffered an out cold result, so because he is perfectly fine. Now for advancements, Tugs actually levels up to level 2, earning +1 to his willpower and also increasing his score by 20 credits. Now from the Boneyard Settlement, at the beginning of this round, what ended up happening is that Boneyard got 10 power, 10 sustenance, and 10 salvage, which brought their grand totals to 32 power, as well as 36 sustenance, as well as 30 salvage. Now with her resources, Shade then built a Hab block, which cost her 10 power, 20 sustenance, and 10 salvage, as well as a drinking hole as well, costing her 10 power, an additional 20 sustenance, and 20 salvage as well. And by the time it's all said and done, my sister Shane now has raised her toxicity level for her settlement by 5, up to 5, as well as established 2 new buildings. At the same time, her now material pool is at 12 power, 6 sustenance, as well as 0 salvage on that part. Now, with the training posts, using Hagar Freelord's well-connected special rule, managed to get 50 credits from that special ability as well. So with those 50 credits, they spend 25 credits hiring a new ammo jack named Sulaco. And the reason why you only cost 25 credits is because when you build the drinking hole building, all hired guns only cost half as much, so that part was pretty cool as well. And she took her remaining 25 credits and put directly into her stash. Now, from her reputation, she earns 1 point of reputation from her settlement, which brings her grand total to 5. Her new record now is at 1 win and 2 losses, and her new gang rating now is at 1,425 points. So moving on, we're going to the Children of the Vault now, the Cold Trader Outcast game played by my little sister Kiddo. For injury, she actually suffered 1 injury on this one, which was Ghost. He actually suffers -1 to his weapon skill, so now he is weapon skill 4 now. At the same time, Mr. Smug as well as Slick, both those guys got out cold results, so they made full recoveries, no problem. Now for advancements, none of the members of the gang advanced during this time, and for their settlement territory for Sanctuary, they were able to score 10 power, 10 sustenance, as well as 66 salvage during this turn. And the reason why is because most of that actually came from the mining the outpost that they managed to secure in the scenario. Now, during that time period, she decided to actually do quite a bit of building for the Sanctuary. First thing she did, she spent 50 salvage in order to build walls as well as gates around her settlement, giving it some additional defenses. At the same time, she also spent another 10 power as well as 10 salvage to get a vault building for her community, which is actually really good because when combined with walls and gates, it means that Sanctuary settlement never has to go worry about being attacked with a settlement raid attack. So because of that, none of the gangs can actually launch a settlement raid scenario against the Kiddo as well as the people of Sanctuary. And lastly, she spent a further 10 power, excuse me, another 20 sustenance, as well as 10 salvage in order to build a hab unit as well. So what that does, it also increased her toxicity level by 1. So now she currently has 2 buildings, 2 defenses, as well as 3 supply. Her current power is at 0, her current sustenance is 5, and her current salvage is at 16 as well. Now during the trading post, she managed to score 250 credits from mining all 4 prospecting sites. So those 250 credits, she spent 50 credits to recruit a new rogue doc named Dr. Feelgood. So now she has a rogue doc now in her gang. She then also spent a further 50 credits in order to purchase chain swords for both Slight as well as Ghost. So now both of her Voidborn scum have chain swords. She then gave Slights and Ghost knives over to Miss Spectre as well as Silks. Now those 2 characters have close combat weapons. And then she also purchased 200 credits worth of armored undersuits for Mr. Sinister, Mr. Smug, Wesley, Slight, and Ghost, increasing their armor saves by 1. Now for reputation, she earns 1 point of reputation from her settlement, giving her a grand total of 3. Her new record now is at 1 win and 2 losses, and her new gang rating now is at 1,225 points. So you guys have it. That is battle report number 4 of our Into the Badzones Outlander campaign in the books. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to our channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We will catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.